slightly, so we're live now. So,
Okay, my name's DStanway, I work for Barnardo's, and I'm the VCS rep on the South Gloucestershire Safeguarding Children's Board. Safeguarding Children boards are a statutory requirement, so every local authority area has to have a Safeguarding Children board, and what they're meant to do is to make sure that arrangements, so services and processes are in place across organisations to protect and to safeguard children in a geographical area. So the last time the South Gloss Safeguarding Board met was on the 29th of April, and it talked about the following issues which should be of interest to people in the VCS. The meeting started firstly with a presentation, and that was designed to get us to think about why we're there, because it was a presentation that involved a case of a 2-year-old boy. And what was presented was that when his mum, who'd already had another child who she'd parented before, removed and adopted, when his mum was pregnant, his mum was using heroin. And so the presentation highlighted the sort of support that had gone in to help the mum, about how successful that support had been, and how effective the agency had been in making sure that this young lad was safe and was doing well. And at the end of the presentation, the summary was a really good news story, that actually he was doing very, very well, as was his mum. The next thing that the board had presented to it was figures about the number of children in South Gloucestershire who are going into care. South Gloucestershire is seeing a really significant increase in the number of children that it as a local authority looks after. And that's very much in line with national trends, where most local authorities across the country are taking more and more care proceedings. The next item that was discussed was about how the early help arrangements are working in South Gloucestershire. And early help is obviously meant to stop children going into care and to stop children going on to child protection plans. And the Safeguarding Board and all of its members, so the members range from the local authority, police, key health partners, probation, lots of organisations who have contact with children and with their families. And there's a real commitment to making sure that early help is a priority in South Gloucestershire. And there is quite a new approach that South Gloss have been developing in how it does early help. What it's recognised is that far too many referrals are just coming in of children that people are worried about, and they're going straight into social care, to social work teams. And there's not enough evidence that support has been put in place to prevent the problem getting worse at an earlier stage. So what social care have asked is that a single assessment framework, or a SAF, S-A-F, is completed. And at the moment, across South Gloucestershire, schools complete the vast majority of single assessment frameworks, or SAFs. And there aren't many that are being done by voluntary sector colleagues. There's also not that many being done by health colleagues. And it was agreed that one of the reasons for the low number of SAFs being completed is that many professionals think that they will be overloaded if they do a SAF, that the expectation on them will be for them to be a lead professional. But there's probably a whole host of other reasons why people aren't doing single assessments. And so if you've got any views about what would make the system work better, please contact me. My email address is duncan.stanway@barnardos.org.uk. The next thing that the meeting heard about was a report from Public Health. Public Health used to be separate from the council, but the government has changed the arrangement, so it's now part of South Gloss Council. And Public Health in South Gloucestershire has just completed its annual school survey, and it's got the views of 6,000 children from across South Gloucestershire on a whole range of subjects. So though we haven't yet seen the final survey, it's really, really helpful, just because of the number of children locally who are consulted, and particularly because it gives us very strong messages that we can used to inform schools about what they need to be doing, especially in relation to PHSE, or sex and relationships type education. The following thing that we talked about in the meeting was there was a discussion about how the LSCB can be confident that it makes a difference to the way in which children are kept safe in South Gloucestershire. And so there was a discussion about different safeguarding policies, and that includes something called the thresholds matrix. And that's really important. If people in the voluntary sector aren't aware of South Gloucestershire's threshold matrix, please go online, look at the South Gloss Safeguarding Children Board website and look at that, because that sets out the level of risk, the level of concern that you or myself, all of us as professionals, should have in order to make a referral, whether that's a referral for early help, or if we're really concerned, whether it hits the threshold for a referral into a social work team. But again, if you've got any views about how the Safeguarding Board's policies are advertised, distributed, or what their impact is on you as a person working in the voluntary sector, please let me know. Mail me, as I said earlier. And then the following item that we had was a presentation from Avon and Wiltshire Mental Health Partnership, and they were talking about some real challenges that they're facing in securing places of safety when the police pick up under 18-year-olds who need to be put somewhere safe. So this is an under 18-year-old who's normally in a very, very high level of emotional distress. They're really not safe out on the streets. And the most common reason why those children are picked up is either because they're on the autistic spectrum and they're very distressed, they might be having an emerging psychosis, or they're just experiencing really severe behavioural and emotional sort of trauma. And Avon and Wiltshire Mental Health Partnership have got a bed for people in that situation. It's based at Southmead Hospital, but clearly there's some real challenges because most people who use those beds are adults. And for Avon and Wiltshire Mental Health Partnership, they have to get out child psychiatrists, child mental health nurses, perhaps a psychologist, in order to make sure that the assessment takes place of any child who needs that bed. And the board was just being informed that really there are a lot of challenges in making sure that that service works in a way that is helpful for children, and that children get a different service to that delivered to adults. And the last agenda item that I want to flag up really that the board spoke about was about the Operation Brook case. That was the big sexual exploitation case in Bristol. And what we know is that a lot of children from South Gloucestershire, though none were involved in Operation Brook, but a lot of children from South Gloucestershire who face sexual exploitation face it in South Glos, but a lot also face it in Bristol, because they will be crossing the borders between Bristol and South Gloucestershire really, really regularly. And what I will say is that the serious case review into Operation Brook has been published. There's a link on the South Gloss Safeguarding Board website to that report, but you can also get it obviously off the Bristol Safeguarding Children Board website. But if you look at nothing else, there are some really very powerful messages for professionals from the children who were victims in Operation Brook. And their messages are on page 14 of the Serious Case Review report. And I would strongly encourage anybody who works with vulnerable teenagers, whether you know that they're being sexually exploited, whether you might just have some concern, but those messages apply to all of us who work with teenagers. So please do have a read. So that's my report from our last South Gloss Safeguarding Children Board meeting. As I said, please give me any feedback either through the Care Forum or directly to me at duncan.stanway@bernardos.org.uk. Thank you.